Welcome back to the Wyatt Claypool Show, everyone. And today I want to talk about how Canadian electoral politics works from the perspective of what not to do, with the perfect example that's currently playing out in British Columbia, that being the utter collapse of the British Columbia United Party, formerly known as the BC Liberals. The BC provincial election has come down to being a race between the BC NDP and the BC Conservatives, and then the Greens are sort of in there. They're competitive in 2 or 3 seats. They're a player. The BC Liberals used to be one of the big two parties. For a long time, they used to be absolutely dominant in BC politics. In the early 2000s, I think there was one of those elections where they won every seat except for like 3 or 4 of them. It was an absolute walkover for the BC Liberals. But then, after John Horgan won in 2017 and became the premier, BC Liberals just didn't know what to do. They didn't know what direction to go in, whether they should lean more liberal, whether they should sort of go back to its more conservative roots, because despite the name being BC Liberals, it was fundamentally a big tent party meant to serve many different constituents on their needs. Generally, people wanting smaller government, just more responsible government. They're not big bloated trade unionists the way that the NDP tend to be. But Kevin Falcon, when he became the new leader of the party, they kicked Aaron Gunn out of that leadership race, who would have made a very good BC Liberal leader. Kevin Falcon took over the party, and as a sign of things to come, he decided that, you know what, we're down in the polls. We lost the last 2 elections effectively, not because we just ignored our own base's wants for a party to fight back against the carbon tax that we technically did implement back in the day, not to fight SOGI, not to push back on decriminalization or safe supply, none of those things. What the voters put us, what they vote for us for is consultant nonsense, random lobbyist nonsense. The BCU has become the party for nobody, because Kevin Falcon can't pick up a glass of water and decide to take a sip from it without 3 focus groups telling him it's a good idea. Are the voters going to be alienated by me drinking 5 Alive? Should I just stick to an orange juice? Is that too radical for people? That is Kevin Falcon's problem. The man's entire career, and I've heard a lot of good things about him back in the day, that he was an actual very good politician back in the early 2010s, 2000s, and then he took some time off from politics and came back. But the problem is, and frankly, this was actually the problem of Jason Kenney in Alberta as the premier of Alberta, when your entire career is basically being a follower, as soon as you become the leader of your party, or even the premier in Kenney's case, you don't know what to do. You stall out and you can't make tough decisions, because in Kenney's case, he was used to going up and asking Harper for help when he was in a hard place. So during COVID, he just relied on anything the AHS directors recommended, even if it actually made him less and less popular with the voters that put him in office. Same thing with Kevin Falcon. He wants to be able to go and ask a Gordon Campbell or a Christy Clark what to do, and he can't these days. And so now he's just been flailing about, frankly copying his conservative opponents. But the entire collapse of the BC United Party started when he tried to initially stop the bleeding of support and kicked John Rustad out of the party for standing up against the carbon tax. Imagine that. The BC NDP, even though the Liberals were the ones who started the carbon tax back in the day, they're the ones who established it, the BC NDP have fully embraced the carbon tax. They are the party of the carbon tax, the party who will always aggressively push for provincial carbon tax increases. And now the BC Liberals, who then Kevin Falcon changed the name to the BC United Party in a very stupid internal party referendum, now they're just kind of also the party that wants the carbon tax to stay, but just in a slightly, slower to increase form. Absolutely stupid. John Rustad, who can read a room, understood that the carbon tax was deeply unpopular. And then so Kevin Falcon decided to plant the seeds of his own destruction, kicked John Rustad out, knowing that there's just an empty, brand new, shiny political vehicle that's always been sitting there since Social Credit collapsed, being the British Columbia Conservative Party. Since social credit collapsed very quickly, most of the conservatives and liberals, soft federal liberals, and then conservatives all joined the provincial liberal party. There just has not been enough momentum to get the conservatives off the ground in all of that time. But he's created a great political moment and proven that his party is useless. So Rustad joined the Conservatives and then immediately started rocketing upward in terms of its support. As soon as it had a leader, as soon as it had an MLA, it became a legitimate political vehicle. And then the current MLA I'm helping out in his reelection, Bruce Banman, after they said that he should just leave the room if he doesn't want to vote to condemn the trucker convoy and say that Bonnie Henry's doing a great job, he then decided to cross the floor, making it an official party. I believe that was actually a change that the NDP had put into place. So it's also John Horgan and David Eby that have also caused the Conservatives to skyrocket, because I believe that they changed the rules so you only need 2 seats to be an official opposition party, so that they could give the Greens a little bit more money for their legislative duties. And so as soon as that happened, they started increasing even faster. And then, because the Conservatives kept getting on a roll, they kept gaining more people from crossing the floor. Lauren Dirksen, Eleanor Sturko, and then just recently Teresa Watt. I've even heard it rumored that there's some other people who might be crossing the floor, and might not even be the United Party that they're coming from. But just to quickly do a plug, just before I move on to what the BC United Party has been doing recently, since I'm out here in Abbotsford helping the BC Conservative Party, I just want to let all of you know who are living in British Columbia. The only thing that the NDP has an advantage over the Conservatives on right now, not the issues, not the polling. We have more polling momentum on the issues. We're more popular. All we need is basically the money to increase our name recognition. The BC NDP have cooked the books when it comes to political finance policy. They get 33% of their campaign spending from 2020 back in a big check from taxpayers. And then I believe they get like $1.50 per vote they got in the last election. And every single year they get that money. And so they are a taxpayer-funded party, where the BC Conservatives basically get no money. I think they've gotten in total $50,000. They've gotten absolutely no money from BC taxpayers. I don't think taxpayers should be giving parties any money at all, but this is the system the BC NDP have started. So if you live in BC, I have a donation link for the Abbotsford South riding. If you donate to that, it will help fund Bruce Banman's re-election campaign. We don't need that much money, but what we're going to do is be the central collecting point for money in the Fraser Valley. Everyone says I say it wrong. I don't know how I'm supposed to say Fraser Valley. Fraser Valley. I don't know. But if you guys donate to that link, we will basically be able to package up money and then send it out to ridings that the BC Conservatives can credibly win. There's a lot of ridings that we can win in, but allows us to kind of manage the region. If you donate up to $100, you get 75% of it back. And so it's only cost you $25 to give us 75. And if you donate up to $550, you get 50% of it back. You get 33% of your money back for everything past $550. Anyways, now let's get back to the BC United Party. So they have not been able to catch a moment. They've been in 4th place in the polls for probably a couple months now. They just fell behind the BC Greens. Nobody likes them. Yes, they're still technically the official opposition through sheer seat count, but many of these people are saying they're not running again. My friend Brian Burgay in the riding of Vancouver-Langara, he's the BC Conservative candidate in that riding. He just had his United opponent just drop out of the race. That was probably going to be the only reason United was maybe going to be able to punch above 20% in that riding. He's gone. That riding's pretty much secured for the BC Conservatives. It's just a disaster. So United is doing what they've been doing for the past 6 months, hoping, because they've effectively gone insane because they're just repeating the same thing over and over again, hoping for different results. They're now just bragging about the fact that they are raising money. It's sad. I don't know why they're doing this. And it says breaking. BC United raised nearly $200,000 within a 48-hour span last week. The momentum is clearly shifting towards BC United, and we're ready to take the fight to the NDP. Momentum in action. I love how pompous this is. If anything, I'm not suggesting anything at all. I'm just making a joke. This looks like money laundering almost, because they have 9% in the polls. They have 9%, and I'm supposed to sit here and think that this is just normal momentum. Really what this is again, BC United is just infested, and I think that is the perfect word to use, infested with consultants and lobbyists, people with, people who make a lot of money to do not a lot of work in the lobbying industry. And so they have big networks of people who they can pretend, hey, we have the second most seats. We're the real opposition to the NDP, and get these people to donate like, the maximum amount to the party, $1,400 and $1,450. $1,450. And so I guarantee it was just a few events where they got a bunch of their normal donors tricked into thinking that they have momentum. They cracked off a check, gave it to them, and now they're celebrating it. The rumor I've heard, and it's just a rumor at this point, is that the BCU, because they were trying to catch a little bit of a moment for so long, they had racked up massive amounts of campaign advertising spending, and they got to pay some vendors off now. And so that's the real reason that they're pushing hard for fundraising. They don't have any momentum on the grounds. I know a lot of their candidates are basically not even door knocking. Yesterday, door knocking, the only person who was voting for the BC United candidate in Abbotsford South works for him, like as an employee, not a member of the campaign, but an employee. And more power to you. You probably know him, probably a friendly guy, but friendly guy is not what politics is about. It's about who's actually going to make a difference if they're in government, and the BC United are not going to do that at all. But yeah, I have heard that basically what they're doing, the rumor is, they're just collecting money because they have to pay off their vendors and keep their own staffers paid for the next 3 months. The political staffers, not the legislative office people, but the people who work directly for the party. They got to keep them paid until October, just since they have contracts, and they're not going to spend almost any money on advertising. They are simply going around tricking donors to give them money so that they can stay afloat for just a little while longer. That might not be true. Maybe they mount a serious campaign, but at the moment, I don't see anything serious. It seems like their spending has really gone down. I haven't seen any ads for them on social media for the last while. They had this really weird ad. I actually want to go see if I can find it. Kevin Falcon had this abysmally weird ad back in the day where it's he looks like Michael Scott in the episode of The Office where he's depressed trying to feed pigeons in November by throwing loaves of bread on the ground. I think he got rid of it. Dang it. Where it's the whole ad starts off with him looking over a pier, and it's a cloudy day. He might as well have been wearing a turtleneck. He looks depressed, he's gonna start playing jazz saxophone or whatever. The imagistics of that party are terrible. And now I want to just jump over to some of the reactions that occurred after the BC United declared that they had momentum. So here we have Sheree Atiste noting the momentum in question, and here are the actual polls. And this is back in after the election. That's where the little targets up there. That's where the parties ended off after the 2020 election. BC United were already not doing very well after the last election. And, it was because John Horgan was actually charismatic, whereas David Eby just comes off like a student union president who somehow lucked into becoming the premier, which is effectively what happened. The crazy activist section of the BC NDP, which actually does not represent the party's base. Most of the party's base are blue collar workers, and they don't like David Eby. But the upper brass of the party, who lives in downtown Victoria and Vancouver, really likes David Eby. So they bullied everyone from actually running against him for the leadership race after John Horgan had to step down from having cancer. And they just acclaimed him. He was acclaimed as the leader, because even the NDP, to switch gears here for a second, even the NDP know their own leader sucks. They know that David Eby sucks at running. And so this is exactly why there's a lot of NDP staffers and politicians, like elected officials, even ministers, leaking to former Green Party leader Andrew Weaver so that he can just spill all the rumors out on the floor. They're all 100% true that David Eby is a control freak while also having no clue what he's talking about. You'll notice every time a minister in BC wants to do some sort of press event to announce a new program or whatever, it's all stupid. All their announcements are garbage at this point. There's nothing that they can actually say, so they're just merely saying, we're going to spend on this and we're going to spend on that, and everything's great, even though everything's awful. That David Eby makes them go stand behind him while he does the presser, because he does not like anyone doing things themselves. He's extremely condescending, and that's why 8 NDP MLAs, who probably had a good chance of winning re-election, if not had a guaranteed re-election, a course for re-election, because a lot of these people were in safe ridings in Vancouver or Victoria, that they're all quitting because they don't like working for David Eby. So even though there's a chance that NDP could win re-election, they just don't want to stick around at all because the greatest horror for them would actually be having to work for a David Eby government for another 4 years. But yeah, so the BC United do not have momentum. They're down around a little bit above 10% on average in this poll, but the last few polls I've seen put them around 9% or 8%. It's been bad. There's the United Post again. A lot of people saying the momentum while they were replying to them. And now, and there's a story I want to get to here. This is the Research Co poll also showing the BC United falling down to 9%. The thing is that you should note about Research Co, they have a very more left-leaning sample bias simply because they are an online poll which skews younger, which tends to skew more NDP, and also a lot of online polls tend to be answered by downtown office workers who tend to skew NDP. You don't get as many tradespeople, farmers, or small business owners in there, and even then, the Conservatives are only down 3% with still 3 months to go in this election. It's going pretty well. But I want to get to this story. Presumably, it's from Aaron Otho? I don't know. I'm terrible at pronouncing people's names. But I was just going to say that this guy had a great story about Kevin Falcon that I wanted to go over here. Ooh, trying to bring up this story thing right here. I always hate how bookmarks work. And he has a great thread here about the BC United Party, and he's somebody who's deeply sympathetic to Kevin Falcon. This is not somebody going for a victory lap on Kevin Falcon's political grave here. So Aaron here says, I like Kevin Falcon and the BCU party. And the BCU party has a lot of great policies and people. I've been a volunteer member donor since I graduated high school in 2000. While still a better option than NDP, it makes several big strategic mistakes, alienating Conservatives from the big tent. He goes on to say, brands must validate their message through action to maintain trust. The party did the opposite, dividing its members. There's a choice now, slow obsolescence or fast. Fast is better for BC in order to beat the NDP to restore competent government, public safety, and prosperity. I've decided to support the BC Conservatives. The remaining BCU MLAs, donors, members also have a choice to make. BC Conservatives have good people, good policies, and public support / momentum. Maybe you won't agree with everything, everyone, but that's how a big united tent works. And Aaron is absolutely right. The problem right now is if you're supporting the BCU because you're trying to get the NDP out of office, it's the least good option. You'd have a better chance of voting for the Greens to try and get the BC NDP out of office. And now I want to jump over to one of the saddest things that the BC United Party has resorted to doing because of their terrible polling numbers. So the BC United, knowing that their brand, because I don't know why they decided to change the name. It didn't make sense at all to me. It doesn't help them in any way to change their name. Like, again, they were afraid that the BC Liberal name was going to hurt them because it was going to associate them with the Federals. Sure, but also name recognition matters. You can't just simply call yourself the BC United Party out of nowhere or BC Coalition or whatever. If people don't know what it is, they're not going to care what it is. That's actually how the BC Conservatives used to get votes back in the day, even when they ran barely any candidates, just because it was the Conservative name. If it was on the ballot, even if it was a paper candidate, they could get 7, 8, 9% of the vote. That brand was worth 8 or 9% points. Do you think if you put up a paper candidate in one of these ridings in BC right now as just a United candidate, just put the candidate's name on the ballot, don't do much campaigning, do you think they're going to get 8 or 9%? Probably more like 3 or 2. There's just no momentum at all. That name means nothing to anybody. Brands matter, and a name has to imply stability, imply that you're competent, and it has to be something that people can immediately connect to something good. I don't know what United even means. United, depending on the province you're in, there's actually a lot of parties with the name United in it. The United Conservative Party of Alberta. There's United Party in Saskatchewan. I believe that there's a United Party out in Ontario. And some of them are more right-wing, some of them are more left-wing. And so it doesn't make any sense at all why you would name yourself something that's very ambiguous. especially considering that you're also associating yourself with something from Alberta, which, BC voters, not that BC voters hate Alberta, but BC voters don't want something that feels like an Alberta imported name, just as Alberta voters wouldn't want something that feels like a BC imported brand. Anyways, but this is the saddest thing that the BC United Party has done. They are reversing course on their terrible branding change. And this is a report that has been confirmed to be true. It says BC United will be asking Elections BC for permission to have the party name on the October BC election ballot read as BC United, formerly the BC Liberal Party. In recognition that a recent internal poll the party members showed 30% didn't know BC United was the new name. That's unforgivable. If their party members, BCU members, 30% of them didn't know the name was changed, you have their emails, their phone numbers, and they didn't know that the BC Liberals changed their name. There was a referendum vote on it. There was a vote inside the party. Do you want the name changed? Yes or no? What do you want it to be? And none of these people were engaged enough. This is just a problem of thinking your base doesn't matter. They don't engage their base. Their entire convention a few months ago was literally just wall-to-wall consultants and lobbyists networking each other, which was like nonsensical because none of them can help each other because they all just have their different interests that they represent or their different strategy firms. And so a strategy firm employee can't network with another strategy firm employee. They're effectively opponents. But BCU got taken over by lobbyists and consultants. And so their own members didn't even know about the name change. And now they want to have on the ballot, guys, we're formerly the BC Liberal Party. I know you don't like the United name, but we're the old party as well. Like, does the BC Conservative Party get to say in brackets we're a lot like the Social Credit Party? Does the BC NDP also get to say in brackets formerly the CCF? That's stupid. They might as well file to BC elections to under BC United Party, formerly the BC Liberals, have a sad photo of Kevin Falcon saying, "Please vote for us." They know they're going to lose. They know they're going to lose. I guarantee all these moves are just so that they can keep raising funds so they can make sure that they have no debts after the party folds. I heard after Teresa Watt, from a viewer of the show who knows somebody in the BCU party, higher up, more in touch with what's going on, there was a meltdown when Teresa Watt in Richmond, Queensborough said she was going to cross the floor. Everyone's jumping ship now. They're like, okay, it's done. We're not winning any seats. Richmond's done. Now Richmond's probably going to be a blue city. Burnaby's probably going to be blue. A lot of these seats are going to go blue. We have no room to win anything. Nobody likes us. Nobody knows who we are. What's the point? Yeah, what is the point? And it's just an example of what not to do in politics. Politics is all about name recognition, brand, likability, name recognition, and hustle. It's all about being able to show all those things. People know who you are, they trust you, and they think you're going to work hard and make a difference. BC United has literally none of those things. Nobody likes Kevin Falcon, probably a nice guy, but nobody likes him on a warm way. His approval ratings are horrible. It's negative 21% right now. That's almost Justin Trudeau federal levels of disapproval. Nobody really knows him. He is the bland porridge of a leader. He's just somebody, and that's the problem. You want somebody who's characterful. John Rustad has character. David Eby, in a certain sense, has character. It's not a good character. People don't like him. But when you see David Eby, you remember him, even though he's kind of a dorky guy. I'm saying this as a dorky guy myself. John Rustad comes off with that more working class, blue collar energy that helps. He's not somebody who's yelling and screaming or anything like that and trying to get artificially, get crowds whipped up. But he's characterful. First to know is characterful. Falcon isn't. And then the party brand you don't know who they are. So they don't have the likable leader. They don't have a brand, because Social Credit, you could say, for the longest time in British Columbia and Alberta and federally in Quebec as well, though that was a party that ran on charismatic leaders. Outside of William Aberhart in Alberta, there wasn't really that many ideological social creditors. Most of them were just neoconservative type leaders like Ernest Manning, the Bennett family, Bill Vander Zalm, who's a very underrated premier, by the way. He was probably the first politician in Canada to truly be destroyed by the media for being conservative. So they basically fear-mongered against him in the fantasy gardens type stuff. But that's another story for another day. But those parties ran on charismatic leaders. The social credit brand really didn't mean much outside the leaders. So you can get away with not having a great brand. But BCU doesn't have a brand, they don't have a leader, and they don't have the hustle. They are not a party that people that either is campaigning hard, I don't see them campaigning hard, and people think that if they got into government, they're probably not going to do anything, which is probably the right way of seeing them. But anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. This has become a bit of a rambling video, but I wanted to kind of go over what's been going on with the BC United Party, what people, just the strange case of a party that just decided that they're not willing to win. In politics, you got to actually be focused on the win, not just focused on being neutral and, palatable. Palatable, being risk managing everything that you do is not compelling. Controversy is actually a good thing. BC conservatives are willing to be controversial. United NDP is willing to be controversial, because being controversial is not always a bad thing. Controversial just means that you do something that's worth talking about, makes people talk. People are concerned about the things that you're saying. They might think that you're right. You might win 80 to 20 people. That 80% of people agree with you, only 20% disagree, but what you said was controversial. But it's something that makes people pay attention. United says nothing. They focus group everything to death, so that when they do wade into a topic, all of the life force of that topic has been ripped away, because it's just the most bland issue for them to stick their toe into. Anyways, but that should be it for me today, guys. If you're in British Columbia, again, donation link in the description below. Click on that if you're donate $100. It only costs you $25. The BC Conservatives need the money to take on the NDP. They don't have all the advantages the NDP have given themselves. And if you don't live in BC, you can always support me with my legal fund. It's the Give, Send, Go link underneath the BC Conservatives donation link. It really helps us out. We've paid over $30,000 in legal fees, fending off this Chinese billionaire suing us for defamation, despite the fact that in over 2.5 years, he hasn't been able to prove defamation. And in an article that we mentioned him in that he took issue with, we literally just hyperlinked to a Globe and Mail article. Everything we said about him was just what the Globe and Mail had said, and we just not even repeated all of it. We just repeated a tiny little summation of it. And because he was too scared, apparently, to sue Globe and Mail a year and a half before we had published our article, he decided to sue us. And even though our article was written in 2020 in August and released, he then sued us for some reason, or me and the National Telegraph, in December of 2021. So it apparently didn't bother him for more than a year. But then he started suing us, and then apparently it's not that big of a deal, because he's been letting it drag out for a very long time, just trying to rack up our legal costs and presenting absolutely nothing substantial to even prove we were rude to him. Not even that what we said was not factual. What we said was factual, but even that we were being nasty or anything, he can't even prove damages. It's just a ridiculous case. So Give, Send, Go link if you want to help us out. And then also my website's down there, WyattClaypool.com. If you guys want to be on the political organizing list I've started nationally for Canada, it allows me to point out good nomination candidates and ridings and contact anybody who watches the show in those areas. Anyways, I'll see you guys in my next video. And, like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. And